The Camellia Group presents at the Calcutta Club the Telegraph National Debate for 2018. And I'm going to start off with a confession. I was told that the editor of the Telegraph asked the president and members of the Calcutta Club to find as a chairperson for this debate a man who would be, or rather to search out for this debate, a chairperson, a man who would be neutral in his political convictions, sky high in his stature, awe-inspiring in his appearance, and charming in character. And in case you wonder why I'm here, I'm just filling in while the president and the committee members of the Calcutta Club are still engaged in this search. The topic for today's debate, as you can see, is this House believes in New India, the pillars of democracy are in crisis. It gives me great pleasure to start off by welcoming the speakers on both sides, and we have a galaxy of talent on both sides, as is customary. I will first invite the team proposing the motion one by one. Speaking first, Mr. Hardik Patel. Hardik ji. Hardik ji is a leader of the Patidar community who has challenged a regime about as old as himself. This Hardik did not play cricket for India. Instead, he was detained for disrupting a cricket match once. Once perceived as the Shiv Sena's googly against the BJP, Hardik has recently been bowled over by the Mamata Banerjee bouncer. Our first speaker for the proposition, Mr. Hardik Patel. Speaking second in favor of the motion is a man most of you are familiar with, Mr. Ardhendu Sen. The Maoist movement in Bengal blew up into a bloody war with the state during his term as the first as the Bengal Home Secretary and then as the Chief Secretary of this state. It was during his tenure as the Chief Secretary that Bengal framed its surrender policy for the Maoists. Mr. Sen retired and then worked as a school teacher for a long time after his retirement, and like most other school teachers, went without a salary during this period. Mr. Ardhendu Sen is our second speaker for the proposition. And the final speaker for the proposition, Mr. Shashi Tharoor. Shashi. A man who is Indian by birth and British by behavior, Keralite in origin and Bengali by character, Hindu by admission and anti-Hindutva by assertion, a diplomat by design and a politician by profession. Shashi's razor-sharp wit and stellar oratory against British imperialism in the Oxford Union won him more male admirers than his female fan following, which he had before that. He actually spent part of his formative years down the street where I live, and in many ways was my neighbor for some time. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the lineup for the proposition speaking in favor of the motion today. Speaking against the motion, in other words, telling you that these pillars are not quite crumbling down yet. First speaker, Mr. Tarun Vijay. Tarunji. Neither political correctness nor editorship of Panchajanya, but it is his political paradox that has made him famous. Born in Uttarakhand, he says he feels he's a son of a Tamil mother. Having studied in a Hindi medium school, he says divine intervention makes him feel Tamil is his mother tongue. And he wants to set up a statue of Thiruvalluvar on the banks of the Ganga in Hardwar. An Uttarakhandi by birth, a Tamil by passion, and an RSS leader by conviction, Tarunji can be a hard nut to crack as a debater. Mr. Tarun Vijay. Our second speaker, speaking against the motion, is none other than Meenakshi Lekhi. Meenakshi ji, a darling of television prime time, a spirited defender of Narendra Modi, an advocate of the highest court in the land, an advocate of the biggest party in the land, an advancer of women's rights. She's not an adversary one would like to argue against every day. She knows a thing or two about arguments. She has said, and I quote, "In the lows of your life, keep your head focused and let the work do the talking." Today, I think Meenakshi ji will let her talk do the working instead. And the final speaker to wrap up the opposition for today's debate is a Calcutta boy, Mr. Shopun Dasgupta. The Calcutta boy from La Martiniere, Calcutta, and Oxford wrote in the Telegraph last Thursday, "There is nothing more appealing than the possibility of political uncertainty to excite the imagination of the editorial and intellectual classes in India today." I like the distinction between editorial and intellectual in that statement. From his thesis on politics in the Midnapur district to his assertion on India in the international scenario, Shopundas has been a life whose canvas has been steadily broadening over the years. Mr. Shopun Dasgupta will be the third speaker on that side. Ladies and gentlemen, it is customary before we start the debate for the chairperson to recite, for the benefit of the speakers and the audience, some of the basic rules that govern this very, very traditionally run debate, easily one of the most famous debates in this country. We were always taught as debaters that debate is the art of speaking such that nothing you say makes the audience realize that you are saying nothing. It is therefore a passionate conflict, not a physical confrontation. With so many members of parliament on both sides, I thought I will emphasize this point. You are therefore allowed to stamp violently on the arguments of your opposition, but you must tread gently on their toes. The motion for today reads, "This House believes in New India, the pillars of democracy are in crisis." The speakers have 10 minutes to present their point of view. We have a timekeeper who I'm going to introduce to you, Mrs. Chandreyi Mitra, who is easily the most important person on the dais because she is going to ring a bell at 8 minutes. And just in case you wonder, it is for you for whom the bell tolls. And when it is 10 and Chandreyi rings the bell again, it is time to say, so long, farewell. The last thing I would like to remind our august speakers today about is some of the basic rules of parliamentary debating that we practice in this club. As you know, in 1907, a very distant ancestor of mine was invited to a tea party with Lord Minto in a neighboring club. And this was what triggered off the formation of this club in 1907. So it was a club which was set up to right a great wrong. And all members of the Calcutta Club appreciate the difference between the right and wrong, not the right and left. And therefore, whatever you say, speakers, must not make any of the ladies of the Calcutta Club blush, or at least blush in such a way as this is apparent to us in the darkness. The Telegraph was founded in 1982, also designed ironically by an Englishman, Edwin Taylor of the Sunday Times, also set up to right a wrong in terms of English dailies of that time. And for 50 years, it has been there to right the right, right with a W, the right with an R. And its slogan is unputdownable. So nothing you say as speakers today must be unputdownable in print in the Telegraph tomorrow. And these are the two requests as chairperson for the debate. As I invite the first speaker on behalf of the proposition, Sri Hardik Patel, to set the ball rolling.
सभी कोलकाता वासियों को मेरा नमन और मंच पर विराजमान हमारी गुजरात में कहते हैं सारे आदरणीय बंधु मेहमानों का हार्दिक पटेल का जय श्री कृष्ण। आप लोग बड़े आंखें खोलकर देखते होंगे कि ये 24 साल का लड़का यहाँ पर बैठा है, क्या बात करेगा, क्या समझेगा। लेकिन बड़ी बात यह है कि जो भी चीज़ हमारे साहब यहाँ से बैठकर बोले, सारी इंग्लिश में बोले, हमारी समझ में काई ना आया, क्योंकि हिंदी हम समझते हैं और हिंदी की बात ही नहीं हुई यहाँ पर। पिछले 2.5 साल से गुजरात के अंदर एक समुदाय की बात करके हम आंदोलन चला रहे थे। बहुत सारी बातें हुई, हमें क्या चाहिए, वो आवाज़ हमने वहाँ की गवर्नमेंट से भी रखी। स्वाभाविक है कि नए युग में मेरे जैसी उम्र के हर एक लड़के को रिजर्वेशन शब्द से एक नफरत सी हो गई थी। लेकिन हम लोग गुजरात के अंदर एक पटेल समुदाय के लिए, जिसकी पॉपुलेशन गुजरात के अंदर 17% है, फिर भी हम लोग आरक्षण मांग रहे थे वहाँ की गवर्नमेंट से। लोगों को लगा आरक्षण मांग रहे हैं पटेल समुदाय तो बड़े सुखी संपन्न समुदाय है, उसके पास डायमंड की फैक्ट्रियां है, बड़ी बड़ी जमीनें हैं। लेकिन आज तक किसी ने हमें ये नहीं पूछा कि रिजर्वेशन मांग क्यों रहे हो। स्वाभाविक है कि आज के नए जमाने में किसी को रिजर्वेशन शब्द से प्यार नहीं है, क्योंकि हर किसी का एक हुनर छिन जाता है, हर किसी का एक जो स्वप्न होता है वो कहीं ना कहीं यहाँ पर नष्ट हो जाता है। लेकिन हम लोग ने बड़ा आंदोलन किया, बड़ी बातें रखी, बड़े लोग बाहर निकले, कम से कम 30-30 लाख लोग जनसभा में इकट्ठे भी होते थे। जमीन के बंटवारे स्वाभाविक है कि होते हैं, भाइयों जितने 4 भाई होते तो 4 भाइयों के जमीन बंटवारे भी होते हैं। रोजगार तो है नहीं, शिक्षा में भ्रष्टाचार इतना ज्यादा हो गया है। अगर कोई प्राइवेट स्कूल के अंदर जॉब करता है या कोई प्राइवेट बिजनेस में जॉब करता है तो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा उसको 10-12 हज़ार रुपये, और कोई गवर्नमेंट में जॉब करता है तो 5 साल तक उसको सिर्फ 4,500 रुपये। ये परिस्थिति हर एक गांव में थी। लोगों को लगा यार क्या बात करने निकला ये लड़का, बात तो सही कर रहा है, क्योंकि हम इंजेक्शन कब लेते हैं? जब कुत्ता काटता है तो 14 इंजेक्शन हमें लेने पड़ते, बाकी हम नहीं लेते। ऐसी ही बात पूरी गुजरात में वैसे हो गई। सब लोग इकट्ठे हो गए, बाहर निकले, और एक सिंपल सा शब्द था, हमें आरक्षण चाहिए। बहुत सारे लोगों ने हमारा विरोध किया। किसी को लगा ये आरएसएस के लोग हैं, किसी को लगा ये भाजपा के लोग हैं, किसी को लगा कांग्रेस से, किसी को लगा शिवसेना, किसी को आम आदमी पार्टी, बहुत सारी पार्टी हमसे जोड़ दी गई। लेकिन अभी भी वो लोग तय नहीं कर पाए कि हम कौन सी पार्टी से हैं। हम पर 2 देशद्रोह के केस लगाए गुजरात के अंदर, 9 महीने तक जेल में रखा। जेल में रात को 12 बजे गुजरात के बड़े उद्योगपति आते थे, जिसके पास 2-2 हजार करोड़ से भी ज्यादा की प्रॉपर्टी और पैसे वाले थे। एक्चुअली जेल में होता है रात शाम को 6 बजे के बाद पूरा बंद हो जाता है जेल। उसके बाद जब तक ऊपरी अधिकारी आपको नहीं कहेगा तब तक आप कैदी को बाहर नहीं ला सकते। हमें रात को 12 बजे लोग मिलने आते थे और एक बड़ा सिंपल सा और काफी दिल को छूने वाला शब्द बोलते थे, हार्दिक आंदोलन बंद कर दो, हम आज ही जज से बात कर कर तुम्हारी जमानत करवा लेते हैं। लगातार 9 महीने तक ये पूरा चित्र चला। कानून व्यवस्था पर मान था, सम्मान था, न्याय तंत्र पर भरोसा था। हमें जमानत पर छोड़ा गया, 6 महीने गुजरात बाहर। ये सारी चीजें मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूं क्योंकि जिस तरह से लोगों के दिमाग में ये पूरा आंदोलन उस प्रकार से डाल दिया गया कि ये लोग गलत हैं। गुजरात की बुराई करने के लिए यहां पर खड़ा नहीं हुआ, क्योंकि गुजरात भी हमारे हिंदुस्तान का एक हिस्सा है। अगर कोई पश्चिम बंगाल से कोई खड़ा होकर पश्चिम बंगाल की बात करेगा तो सही भी बात करेगा और बुरी भी बात करेगा। गुजरात के अंदर ना एक भी प्रकार का एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है। आईएएस आईपीएस तो कहने के होते हैं। पुलिस की कोई वैल्यू नहीं है। न्याय तंत्र का तो पूरा मजाक है। जो मॉडल दिखाया गया है वो मॉडल के तहत आप लोगों को सही लगता होगा कि गुजरात काफी विकास हुआ है, लेकिन जिस तरह से किसान आत्महत्या करता है, जिस तरह से फसल के दाम नहीं दिए जाते, युवा बेरोजगार है, पटवारी की जॉब में सिर्फ लेने होते हैं 1200 लोग और उसके अंदर फॉर्म भरते हैं 16 लाख लोग। महिला सुरक्षा, अच्छे अच्छे वीडियो बनते होंगे। गुजरात में रात को 12 बजे नवरात्रि में महिलाएं घूम सकती है, अच्छी बात है, वो बात है नहीं, ये कोई ऐसी चीजें नहीं है। दिन में जब पेपर निकलता है सुबह का तो आपको पूरे पेपर में 3 से 4 बलात्कार के केस, हत्या के केस, अपहरण, किसी से पैसे मांगने के लिए उसको उठा लेना, ये सारी चीजें रही है। और सबसे बड़ी शिक्षा में बड़ा भ्रष्टाचार। 1990 के बाद 1919 के बाद गुजरात के अंदर, खास तौर पर अहमदाबाद के अंदर 2 गवर्नमेंट अस्पताल थी। उसके बाद आज तक एक भी अस्पताल नहीं बने। पूरी शिक्षा और अस्पताल प्राइवेट हो गए। हर एक गवर्नमेंट का व्यक्ति, विधायक, मिनिस्टर उसके अंदर पार्टनर रहा है। मैं ये सारी बात फिर से दोहरा इसलिए रहा हूं कि हम लोग आरक्षण मांगने का जो कारण है, जो वजह है, यही है। अब आरक्षण मांगना शायद गुनाह भी हो सकता है, शायद सही भी है, लेकिन हमारा सबसे बड़ा जो कोई विरोध है तो गवर्नमेंट की नीतियों का है, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट की नीति इस तरह से तैयार हुई है कि हमें कुछ अच्छा करने का मौका नहीं मिला। बड़ी बात एक कहूंगा कि अगर हमें रोजगार मिला होता तो आज कोई हार्दिक पटेल भी यहां बात करने के लिए खड़ा नहीं होता। लेकिन बड़े गर्व की बात है कि हमें रोजगार कैसे मिले उसकी चर्चा हमारे सदन में नहीं होती, लेकिन पकोड़ा कैसे बेचा जाए उसकी चर्चा बड़े जोर से होती रहती है। हमें किस तरह से इस देश को आगे ले जाना है उसकी चर्चा अभी तक सदन में नहीं होती, लेकिन 90 मिनट का भाषण विपक्ष को कोसने के लिए होता है। चलो कोई बात नहीं, चलता रहता है, लेकिन बड़ा इश्यू एक बात बताऊंगा क्योंकि बेल बज गया है। पिछले 3 महीनों से हम टीवी डिबेट देखते रहते हैं और टीवी डिबेट में कहीं विकास, जस्टिस, लोया, रोजगार, किसान का मुद्दा नहीं आया। सिर्फ 2 ही मुद्दे आए, राम मंदिर, मस्जिद और हिंदू और मुसलमान। इससे तीसरा मुद्दा नहीं आज तक आया। चलो कोई बात नहीं, 100 में से 99 बेईमान फिर भी कहते हैं मेरा भारत महान। इन सारी चीजों को लेकर हम आवाज उठा रहे हैं, छाती चौड़ी करके, 56 की तो नहीं है मेरी भी, लेकिन छाती चौड़ी करके अपने अधिकार के लिए बाहर निकले। किसी के सामने सर झुकाने की आदत नहीं है और मुझे भरोसा है हम काफी अच्छा करेंगे और काफी अच्छा करेंगे, क्योंकि राजनेता बनने के लिए नहीं आया, लीडर बनने के लिए आया हूं। और ऐसा लीडर कि आपको क्या चाहिए वो मैं देना चाहता हूं, मैं आपके सिर पर कुछ थोपना नहीं चाहता। धन्यवाद। इंकलाब जिंदाबाद।
Dhanyavad, Hardik ji. That was the leader of the proposition talking to you about his disillusionment with the pillars of democracy. But Hardik ji is obviously a very passionate Gujarati because he thinks clearly that New India in the motion refers to Gujarat. Does the leader of the opposition think differently? Let us find out from Mr. Tarun Vijay. We've kept 2 podiums on 2 sides to keep you separated as far as possible.
I'm not telling my age. I think we are invited here because they think that we can say something substantial, not because they judge us by our age. Thank you, friends, and I'm honored to be here. What more proof of the strength of our democratic pluralism can be? On the left side is the 6-feet portrait of the King Emperor of England. And here we are sharing a dais with a person who wrote a book on the loot by the British, and he is not going to demand that that portrait should be removed from here. So we are safe. Friends, the democracy is a mind. It's a state of mind, and the way we are seeing that 1 billion people created a change that India has never seen in the last 7 decades, and just been the party that thought that perhaps to rule India is their birthright, son, daughter, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, everyone was there. That is the biggest springtime for democracy in India. The entire scenario changed. For the last 30 years, first time India saw that India changed and an absolute majority was given to a person who was witch hunted for the last 10 years. The judiciary of Gujarat is no good. The police in Gujarat is no good. The bureaucracy of Gujarat is no good. The people of Gujarat was insulted and looked with contempt like none else. And they went like those who created the passage for Mahmud Ghaznavi to destroy Somnath. And they demonstrated against that person in New York, in Washington, against their fellow countrymen. And he became the lion of the country, and he became the leader of the country, getting absolute majority in a democratic change which the world has never seen elsewhere. What more you need? Sir, here is a democratic setup where some people think if they are in power, the democracy is flowering. If they are out of power, democracy is in peril. So, till EVM machine declares they are successful, EVM machines are good. But the moment they are defeated and the people reject them and dustbin them, oh no, there is something, some problem in the EVM machine. Here are the people full of hatred. I'm sorry, sir. I must change my word. Here are the people who are full of precipitated hatred against a person who is having a different viewpoint. They can't tolerate them. Twice was banned the RSS, the biggest democratic movement, which fought emergency. Here was a leader who tried to stop the President of India to attend the funeral of another leader just because he differed with him. Here was a person who stopped the democratic setup in the Parliament House, and they are asking us. We went every time in the Central Hall to pay homage to Rajiv Gandhi, to pay homage to Indira Gandhi, to pay homage to Jawaharlal Nehru. And you are the person when the Indian Prime Minister won the war in 1971, my leader said that we admire you. We salute you because you are India's Prime Minister, you are not a party's Prime Minister. The democracy we live is this. And here is the democracy that they live. They refused even once to pay homage or to attend the homage ceremony in the parliament of one of the tallest sons of Bengal, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. They refused. They are talking of democracy. They destroyed all the pillars of democracy, judiciary. Have you ever heard the word? Committed judiciary. Who gave? 6 years of parliament. Who gave? Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha. Who was he? And these guys, they kept silence when the worker after worker are brutally killed in daylight in Kerala. The RSS workers, the BJP workers, just because they believe in a different viewpoint, in a democratic setup, they have no right to live. Never even a single word was said to condemn those incidents. Dalit after Dalit is killed. But they keep silence because it doesn't suit them. It doesn't suit them. साहब, अंधेरे से उठकर देखो कि सूरज निकल रहा है. फितरत में लगे धब्बे कुदरत के करिश्मे हैं. अरे बुत हमको कहें काफिर, अल्लाह की मर्जी है. ये बुत हमको कह रहे हैं. और क्या क्या किया है इन्होंने? पूरे डेमोक्रेसी को खत्म करने के लिए तमाम साजिशें रची. दूसरे किसी को बोलने की इजाजत नहीं दी गई. आपको दिख नहीं रहा है? अगर हिंदुस्तान में स्त्रियों का सम्मान बढ़ रहा है, उज्ज्वला योजना बढ़ रही है, करोड़ों महिलाओं के घरों से, रसोई से अंधेरा हट रहा है, गैस मिल रही है, लोकतंत्र खतरे में है. अगर किसानों को 2 रुपए में जिंदगी भर की पेंशन का और बीमा का मिल रहा है, लोकतंत्र खतरे में है. अगर डोकलाम के समय हिंदुस्तान अपनी स्टील की स्पाइन के साथ में खड़े होकर हिम्मत के साथ दुनिया को चकित कर रहा है, नहीं यार, लोकतंत्र बहुत खतरे में है. बहु बांधो छे અહીંયા તો આ માણસ તો કામ કરતા જ નથી. હા, શું બોલો છો તમે? હા, कश्मीर में हिंदुस्तान हिम्मत के साथ में दुश्मन के घर में घुस के उसको मार दे? नहीं यार, कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, ये फालतू की चीज है, ये तो सब फेक है, पाखंड है. प्रूफ दिखाओ. अरे तुम्हारा प्रूफ देखें. You don't believe in the judiciary. You don't believe in the democratic system. You don't respect the parliamentary system. You don't respect the opposition viewpoint. You don't let the other person speak his viewpoint. And you talk about the democracy. Who gagged the media? Who gagged the media? Till media sings songs for you, the media is independent. If media sings for the country, media is bad. और 56 इंच की छाती की बात करते हो? तुम्हारी हैसियत क्या है? अरे 56 इंच की छाती सिर्फ उसकी हो सकती है जिसके दिल में भारत माता की धड़कन धड़कती हो, और किसी की नहीं हो सकती है. अंधेरों में रहना छोड़ो और आगे देखो. और ये देखो कि जिस बंगाल में हो, आई एम ए रामकृष्णाइट, आई एम trained in Belur Math. I've been told, respect your opponent. Respect the person who has a different viewpoint. कभी ये लोग चलते थे वो गाय और बछड़े के साथ में, भूल गए ना, बाद में आए हैं. और कभी उस गाय का काट के सर बाजार में लेके जाते हैं. ये डेमोक्रेसी की बात करते हैं. गाय बछड़ा भूल गए और अपना उत्स भूल गए. They forget that they get democracy, and here is the flowering of democracy that India has ever seen. We lost Delhi. 67 out of 70 were given to the other party. We lost elections, we won elections, we lost other things, we won other things. And you say that democratic pillars are going down. No, sir. The fact is, your power is gone, so you think democracy is gone. Your democracy is synonymous with your scandals, scams. Every day, India woke up to a new scandal and scam. Every day, India woke up to a new hate killing. The hatred that you had for the different viewpoint and the different people is simply immeasurable. You worked against your country's people in the foreign land. Have you ever heard about it? हिंदुस्तान के दुश्मनों को इन्हीं से पनाह मिलती थी कि जो बाहर के लोग आते थे, मेरे दुश्मन के खिलाफ मैं उसकी मदद करता था. ये काम किया. Sir, for once, think of India. For once, think of those who are poor in spite of 70 years of misrule. कितनी हालत खराब है फुटपाथ पे, स्कूलों में, मजदूरों के यहाँ. Let us work together. Let us work together in the spirit of togetherness and collectiveness. India belongs to us all. Our parties, ideologies, our thought processes are secondary to my nation's progress and development. My nation first, everything else is second. That is my democratic belief. That is my faith. I must say, sir, तेरे लप्पे है इराको शाम मिस्रो रोमची, लेकिन अपने ही वतन के नाम से वाकिफ नहीं. घूमते रहो. तेरे लप्पे है इराको शाम मिस्रो रोमची, लेकिन अपने ही वतन के नाम से वाकिफ नहीं. सबसे पहले मर्द बन हिंदुस्तान के वास्ते, हिंद जाग उठे तो फिर सारे जहां के वास्ते. वंदे मातरम.
Thank you, Tarunji. I thought I'll look up the definition of the word pillar in the dictionary this morning. And I thought the word pillar must mean support. I was pleasantly surprised when all the dictionaries referred to the word pillar as an upright support. And I think we've had a launch of this debate with a view to the word uprightness in the supports of this democracy. And the word upright has many a connotation, as you're well aware. So while we have had the leader from this side pronouncing to you how democracy today is a picture of the physiology of frustrations, we've had the leader on this side telling you how it is not the physiology of frustrations, but the anatomy of aspirations. And that's where we stand as we hear the two opening speakers today. Speaking second in favor of the motion, Mr. Ordhindu Sen.
I'm a bit surprised that Calcutta seems to be still worrying about democracy. Coming from Delhi, it seems a bit old-fashioned to me. Look at what is happening around the country. Do you think we live in a democratic country? Do you think we are trying to build institutions of democracy today? Yes, 3 years back when Modi ji came with a thumping majority, we were very happy. We thought, here is a person who will have every interest to work for democracy, to strengthen the roots of democracy in the country. But we are disappointed by what has happened in the past 3 years. And from more or less the same facts, the same set of facts, we come to the conclusion that democracy is indeed in trouble. And when democracy is in trouble, naturally, the pillars will also be in trouble. They'll be under pressure, no doubt. What are the facts that I referred to? Here we saw our Prime Minister demonetizing 80% of the currency in circulation, apparently without consulting anyone. Later on we found that he had the advice of experts, he had the opinions of people who knew, but he ignored them. And what happened as a result? The poor people of the country had to suffer immensely. Does this happen in a democracy? Does the chief minister of a state going for assembly elections remind the people, ask them to vote as if she is the only candidate in all the 294 constituencies? Meaning to say that nobody else matters at all? Is this how a democracy functions? Look at the chief election commissioner of the country, a constitutional authority who has been empowered by our laws to be the ultimate authority on matters relating to election. He has the powers to define his way of functioning. And he has to wait for permission to announce the date of a state election. Can you imagine? Hardik Bhai state. So these are the things that are happening, and the more we think that, the more we remember the optimism of 2014 when BJP came to the parliament with such a majority, the sadder we feel at what's going on today. The media is allowed into the assembly to broadcast the proceedings of the day. They come in, they are allowed to come in when the chief minister is speaking. As soon as she finishes, they have to pack up and go out. This is our democracy. Jantar Mantar has been closed. Access has been denied to all those who use that place to protest. Can you have a democracy without protests? And the same thing is happening in Calcutta, in the roads and squares in front of the Calcutta University. You can't do any demonstration there. You can't take up any protest there. You support a Pakistan team in a cricket match and a sedition case is slapped against you. You try to take recourse to the anti-defection law. The law is rendered powerless because the Honorable Speaker does not have the time or the opportunity to adjudicate the case, at least in the genuine cases. So this is not the rule of law. This is not democracy as we have known it for the last 70 years. Now we are discussing New India. India has always been a mixture of the old and the new. There's always a traditional element in our country. There is always a new element. The new elements are not always very easy to spot, but over the last few years, the new element has been, in fact, very easy to spot, because we find that the country is awash with the worst possible kind of obscurantism and anti-democratic spirit. This is the defining feature of New India as we see it today. So I'm forced to the conclusion that the powers that be have discarded the concept of democracy. And what do you do when you discard a concept? You take a hacksaw and cut down the upright supports. That is what we see happening today. We had the parliament, the assemblies, the bureaucracy, the press, the opposition. You find that all of them are losing their vitality. Hardik Bhai gave you some details about Gujarat. You are well aware of what is happening in your own state. Lok Sabha, I'm told, is now sitting for less than 60 days in a year. The Prime Minister does not find the time to attend. Even if he attends, he does not participate in the deliberations. And the same goes for the assemblies. Is this democracy? What is happening to the media? The journalists today have newly discovered strategic litigation against errant journalists. Remember what happened to Poranjoy? What is happening to the bureaucracy? You had a police officer in this state who openly, publicly praised the chief minister. She is not supposed to do this, but no action was taken. Action was taken after 3 years when she went against the state. This is our democracy. So, a retired foreign secretary of the country had to recently say that Indian Administrative Service has now become the Indian Aadhaar service. Aadhaar is one of the not very upright pillars that are being brought to support the new democracy. Why are you against democracy? Because you're not forward-looking, you're backward-looking. You go back 3,000 years, 5,000 years, try to derive your inspiration from those days when we were having interspace travel and those heady days of head transplants. You try to draw your inspiration from there. That is why those days we were not a republic. We had good kings. We had good queens. Hardik Bhai has just met one like that. So, you want to take us back to those good kings and queens. I'm sure the people will not agree to that. You will find it very difficult to make a basically progressive set of people to turn their head backwards. I would renew the appeal that Mr. Tarun Vijay has placed before us. Let us work together. Let us create a futuristic society which looks at the future. Otherwise, you will find that Surpanakha will have the last laugh. You will be nowhere. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sen, for ending on that supremely surgical note. Mr. Sen introduced you to the 4 pillars of democracy, which the proposition is going to talk further about. the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, and the media. You know, ladies and gentlemen, there is something amazing about the physics of pillars. When you have 4 pillars that provide solid support to you, you feel you're on level ground, though elevated above the ground. When one of the pillars is destroyed, like Mr. Sen says, with a hacksaw, then the platform tilts perilously to one side and you don't feel you're on level ground. But unfortunately, the law of physics being what it is, if you chop off all the pillars with the hacksaw, the platform again attains level ground. Only the people on the platform don't realize they're closer to planet Earth then. Meenakshi Lekhi is going to tell us whether this platform is above the ground or is it on level ground. Mrs. Lekhi.
Dear friends, I was just thinking that is Taslima Nasreen allowed to come to the state and express herself? And the participatory democracy that we all keep talking about. When Durga Visarjan is not met with because there is another festival on the same date, I must say people in this country have lived through the centuries and have suffered through the centuries. So what you see today is not something which has started in 2014, but the crisis existed and the roots of crisis existed far before in the ancient times and the medieval times specifically. This city of Calcutta, how the construction came about, how the imperialist powers took over, and from the erstwhile Nawabs will tell you the history of this country. And in spite of all that, we've seen how partition of Bengal was fought by every Indian in the first go. And everybody, irrespective of their religion, irrespective of their caste, irrespective of their gender, said Vande Mataram. But within few years, a crisis was sought to be created. And in that crisis, it was sought to be enumerated to people that the world is in crisis, we need to partition the country, we need to divide because we can't live together. And that is the narrative which is continuing for past 70 years. But whenever close to elections, whenever we are rethinking of creating new India, every blame turns to be given to the central government, as if the crisis of caste, the crisis of gender, the crisis of religion, the crisis of all these conflicts came only in 2014 and nothing existed ever before. And the best, beautiful thing is, the political system was so clean in this country that the so-called erstwhile Durga had to impose emergency on this country. Mind it, it was before 2014. 500,000 Kashmiri families had to leave their home and hearth and come back and be immigrants in their own country. Mind it, it was before 2014. Kalia Chak to Bashir Hat, repeat of incident day in and day out. And my friend in the opposition, Mr. Patel, happened to call Lady Gandhi. I was just wondering, he's so enamored by Lady Gandhi, which Lady Gandhi was he talking about? And the living Lady Gandhi may have a problem with it. Did he even consult her? That he's labeling someone else as Lady Gandhi. Because the present Lady Gandhi has a problem and unable to decipher whether reservation should be given to Patidar or not, whether the reservation which Mewani seeking is right or wrong, whether the opposition which is coming from Jayesh Thakur is right or wrong. That is the real crisis of democracy for them. The real crisis of democracy is when democratic voices are not allowed to be heard. And I must point out the previous speaker, Mr. Sen, when he said, Aadhaar is not the upright pillar. So I must say, when a former prime minister said that when we send 10 rupees or 100 rupees, not even 2 rupees go to the people for whom it is meant for. Aadhaar is the right Aadhaar for the direct benefit transfer. And that's what you need Aadhaar for. And Aadhaar will give rise to the right democracy, because subsidy has to be given to people who need the subsidy, not people who on the way put that subsidy in their black pockets. And when, very interestingly, he talked about demonetization, I must admit that demonetization was a phase where all the 1,000 rupees bundle got to see the light of the banks rather than the lockers and the sacks of the homes. And all that has got added up to your GDP and economy. So streamlining of economy was an important feature which was missing in this country. No country in the world, not even Pakistan, has that much of cash flowing as was flowing in this country. And especially this state, which is right next to another country, where smuggling, arms racket, trafficking, all kinds of things are going on. This demonetization has led to stop of all those criminal activities, and which has made the state secure. So democracy is secure, and pillar of democracy is secure, because once the state is strong, obviously democracy is secure, or securer than before. Anti-defection law, I was not really sure when he mentioned about anti-defection law that the speaker doesn't have the time. But as per the procedures, the speaker refers all the anti-defection matters to the privilege committee for its opinion. So the details need to be gone into by the privilege committee. I am seized of one matter, which I am looking after as a chair of the privilege committee. And lo and behold, within a month or 3 months, we submit our reports. That is the efficiency of democracy. CEC, as if CECs of the previous years were doing anything different, because the dates of any state elections can be preponed or postponed depending on the situation of the state, because central forces need to be augmented, people in the state need to be prepared for. A state like West Bengal, where a lot of violence we've seen in the past, a lot of lack of free elections is what we've seen in the past. The dates vary, and it is the CEC who takes that call. And whenever we look at the 20 MLAs who have been disqualified on the ground of disqualification because they were holding the office of prophet, I must remind this House that earlier on, Mrs. Gandhi had to leave her position because she was an NSE member and was holding the simultaneous post and as an MP. So she was disqualified from the House. So this is the strength of democracy, that in democratic process, no matter how big or strong you are, the law takes its course, even when you are Mrs. Gandhi, the Lady Gandhi. Jantar Mantar happened. The Jantar Mantar was shifted, not because anybody in the administration told it, but people in the neighborhood were finding it difficult to live with the noise day in and day out. There are people who have properties worth millions. There are people who are senior and aged who live in that locality, not looking after anyone simply because somebody decides to sloganeer at any point in time. NGT has taken that call. So much for independence, because NGT is an independent body which can take a call on pollution on Mr. Amit Shah's rally as well as Jantar Mantar. So don't blame it on lack of democracy. In fact, it is because of democracy this decision is possible. So Pakistan team was another example cited, that when somebody's shouting slogans for Pakistan team, sedition law applies. My point would be that in this state, there are several localities where you can't carry a Tiranga Yatra, where people get into your homes and will shoot you at sight, and the police will not act. So every law and order situation, every situation where criminals need to be handled firmly under democratic process, that needs to be allowed, and that will further add to strengthening democracy. Because what we see, the media narrative these days, that depending on who the victim is and who the accused is, the narrative changes. So if it is Hadia's father applying to the Supreme Court, saying, I want to be protected, and under those circumstances, it's a case of intolerance. But if Ankit Gupta gets killed for wanting to marry Shehzadi, there is no award Wapsi gang, and that is how narratives gets changed. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you very much, Meenakshi. You know, Meenakshi alluded to the upright pillar. I was always taught in my student days, the problem with a pillar is, if it either leans to the left or leans to the right, it cannot remain upright in the end. Just a thought. She also informed us about the supreme efficiency of the legislative in this country and reminded us that it is you and I that elect our legislative and elect our legislators, and that is the great power of democracy. I am sure I will be excused as a simple brain surgeon by speakers on both sides if I remind them that in the last 10 years, our legislators have spent less than 6% of parliamentary time actually making laws. Speaking against the motion, speaking for the motion is the last speaker, Mr. Shashi Tharoor.
Mitron, I hope that covers everybody. I'm glad that by this stage of the debate we seem to have agreed on defining our terms. The pillars of democracy are seen largely as institutional pillars, not just the usual judicial, executive, legislative ones, but also media and civil society. But I would argue that the pillars of our democracy also include principles. Principles of freedom of speech, for example. Principles of the freedom of religion. Equality, all of which have been prescribed by our Constitution, which is perhaps the platform that our chairman described, holding up these pillars or being held up by these pillars. And these pillars have to be measured, surely, by facts, by concrete indicators, economic well-being, social equality, list of violent incidents, and so on, and not merely rhetoric. I'm sure we all enjoyed what my friend Tarun Vijay had to say, but he has to understand there have to be practical indicators to measure the arguments about these pillars. Otherwise, it would be a very bitter pillar to swallow, Tarunji. Now, what is New India? We haven't defined that, have we? Well, it seems that it's the ruling party's vision of what is the India they're creating. Certainly, the Prime Minister used the phrase New India 11 times during his Independence Day speech at the Red Fort, and again a few times at the Lok Sabha when he spoke there a couple of days ago. And then we have the word crisis, which the organizers have given us. What is eroding the strength of these pillars, rather like termites eating away at the wooden beams of a house? What is causing this crisis? Well, I'll anatomize it in 3 or 4 quick categories. The first, very clearly, is rising intolerance. It seems that our new India is to be one in which a narrow-minded majoritarianism prevails. One which unfortunately capitalizes on the worst tendencies of the members and the followers of the ruling dispensation. There has been no shortage of examples of hate speech, for example, since 2014. We have a minister of the government, no less, saying that the entire country can be divided into Ramzadeh and Haramzadeh. Forgive the Calcutta Club lady members, please forgive me. We have indeed the argument that Ghar Wapasi must be conducted, mass conversions of those who have made the mistake to worship the wrong God. We have decisions to ignore, denounce, omit the Taj Mahal, with even the chief minister of the state in which it stands saying the Taj Mahal is not Indian culture. We have another minister in the government asking the prime minister's critics to go to Pakistan, just echoed by his fellow ideologue, Mr. Vinay Katiyar, a couple of days ago. I mean, if you want your enemies to go far away, why Pakistan? Why not Canada? But there is a reason, because Pakistan is a code word. It is a symbol of saying, essentially, if you criticize this government, you are a Muslim lover. Go to the Muslim country that was carved out of India. This is the kind of subliminal hatred that is sought to be sown and spread in our country. And then, of course, we have had these attacks on human beings in the name of protecting the cow. I'm not just Hindu, I'm vegetarian. I see nothing in my faith that tells me that a human being should be assaulted and killed for what he chooses to eat. But apparently, that's what is now free to happen. There have been 48 such incidents counted by independent NGOs. Mob lynching has become a new phrase in our political lexicon. Muslims and Dalits are particularly vulnerable, as incidents have appeared on our media, on YouTube, showing Dalits being flogged for doing their job of skinning a dead cow. Muslims and Dalits being lynched merely for being what they are. And then we have the rising intolerance that takes a different form of the right to be offended. We've just seen the farcical, what should have been farcical, drama of Padmavati being played out in the last few weeks and months, in which ultimately a whole bunch of self-appointed guardians of the honor of their community decided to hold an entire section of the country to ransom, assaulted buses, threw stones at a school bus with terrified children cowering inside, intimidated theatre owners into not showing films, even got some craven state governments to ban a film that they had never seen. And surely we are now looking at a country in which everybody wants to claim the right to be offended, whether it's because a fictional or perhaps historical queen's honor has been besmirched, or whether it is simply a case of wanting a cheap newspaper headline because the government will indulge them as long as they espouse the right cause. Now it's a new film that's starting up a new group of people wanting to be offended, Manikarnika, which apparently is about the Rani of Jhansi. This segues into my second point, freedom of speech, because now we are living in a new India in which dissent is seen as seditious, where protests are anti-national, where there is economic pressure on media owners and indeed intimidation of the rest, so that we find some stories mysteriously disappearing from the websites of some of our supposedly leading media houses. Other stories issued by courageous journalists not being followed up by those who have the resources and the alleged reputation to follow them up. All these are illustrations, frankly, of the petty intolerance and bigotry that passes for a ruling ideology today. Attacks on journalists have been mounting. 3 have been killed in 2017, 48 have been attacked, 12 have received threats, and there have been 27 cases of police action against journalists. All of this compiled by an international body, Reporters Without Borders, whose 2017 World Press Freedom Index shamefully ranks India 136th out of 180 countries. Now that sounds bad, but you'll realize how bad it is when I tell you that Afghanistan ranks 120th, 16 places above us. How about the ease of doing business for journalists, my dear friends in the opposition? The media instead is now being distracted and diverted by yellow journalism. For them, sensationalism, the breaking news culture, is a substitute for real upholding of our democratic values. What do we find in this process? There is no question that media, free press, is the mortar that binds together the bricks of any democracy, and also the open window embedded in those bricks, through which the winds of the world, as Mahatma Gandhi had said, can blow through our house. That window is now being shut in this new India. Media should be a mirror and a scalpel in showing us all our faults, the government as well as the opposition. Now it seems the new media slogan is the nation wants to know only what sins the opposition is committing. The government is apparently beyond the pale. And when, frankly, the media in its breaking news avatar becomes a blunt axe instead of either mirror or scalpel, neither society nor democracy is well served. And then finally, of course, we've had the allusion to Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Look, I have no problem saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai, but if a Muslim friend of mine says that in his interpretation of his faith, he is not permitted to treat the nation as a goddess, and like Meenakshi Lekhi, he will say Jai Hind and Jai Bharat, but he will not say Bharat Mata Ki Jai. My reading of democracy says he has the right not to say Bharat Mata Ki Jai and not to be called anti-national in the process. That the freedom of speech is also the freedom of silence. But of course, that may be more than our present dispensation can understand. And then the third pillar of economic strength, because after all, we are diluting the strength of our democracy. We are not able to extend economic strength to our people. Instead, as Mr. Sen has pointed out, we have demonetization, a bad idea implemented badly, and the GST, a good idea implemented badly. That's what we have in the new India today. Not the one nation, one tax we were promised with the GST, but one nation, three taxes, CGST, IGST, SGST, and 6 GST rates. And then they're talking about building a new India on this confusion. What is the result of all of this? Micro and small enterprises have closed down. Daily wage workers lost their jobs in droves after demonetization. Inflation resulted in many, many places. Manufacturing went down. Job creation has gone down. Trade is stagnant. No wonder they're talking about a new India, because they've managed to make such a mess of the old India. And what was the old India clamoring for? Inclusive development. The point is that the middle class is all right, but democracy is only strengthened when the underclass is also empowered. Whether we grow at 6% as we're doing these days, or 9% as we did under the bad old India, the fact is the real priority for our country has to be 25%. The 25% at the bottom of our socio-economic pyramid. Economic growth is vital. Of course, we agree with that. That's all the government wants to talk about. But the revenues of that growth have to be shared with those who have nothing. The magic of the market will not appeal to those who cannot afford to enter the marketplace. And what does democracy's economic strength involve? It involves education, which frankly involves the budget that this government in their new India have halved from 6.15% of their budget to 3.71% between 2014 and 2018. Healthcare, which has been slashed to a mere 1.4% of GDP. And instead we have this announcement of this mirage, this Modi Care scheme of health for the poor, in which, of course, all we've got is a slogan without any financial provision to actually finance it, and a method that will only benefit the insurance companies, not the poor, whose lives can be ruined by a serious illness incurred by a breadwinner. That was 8 minutes, right?
That was 10.
Oh, I only got the first bell. I'm so sorry. All right, I will wrap up in a second in that case. There is a lot more to be said, but I suppose the bell reminds us that we're all like Egyptian mummies. We are strapped for time. So I'm going to have to round this up just to say that at the end of the day, what we need to ensure in this country to keep those pillars of democracy standing is not their kind of new India, but a different kind of new India, one in which you won't get lynched for the food you eat, marginalized for the faith you hold dear, criminalized for the person you love, or imprisoned for making use of the fundamental rights guaranteed by your own constitution. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Shashi. When Shashi is speaking, even a second lasts a lot longer. Shashi introduced us to his opposition to one of the last pillars of democracy that have been alluded to today, the media. And he reminded us that the media no longer makes news, the media makes up the news. Perhaps alluding to the fact that the media no longer presents a photograph, but paints a picture. And as you know, a picture may be a painting, or a picture may be worth far more than a photograph, but the difference between a photograph and a painting is a lot of imagination goes into the latter. Finally, rounding up on the side opposition, asserting the opposition's conviction and faith in the solidity of the pillars of the Indian democracy. As a man who was a media person, but now is a member of Parliament, I invite Mr. Shopun Dasgupta.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it's always good to be back and speak in Calcutta Club, partly because, as the chairman has pointed out, here is an audience that understands the norms of parliamentary discourse far more effectively than do Parliament itself. It's also reassuring to be invited by the Telegraph and being told to speak on this side, partly because that's a candid admission from the Telegraph that there exists another side. Sometimes reading the papers, I sometimes forget, is democracy in danger? Or is the fact that a daily photograph of the lady who is celebrated as the new avatar of Gandhi, in the Bengali papers at least, is that a sign that democracy is in danger? Or is it a sign that a rounded discourse is really what is lacking in this country? That there has been a polarization, that there has been a nervousness. Shashi, my friend, spoke very eloquently about the old India he is missing. And he's missing dearly, let me assure you that. But what constituted this old India? Number one, I'm very glad that he's recognized that there is, for a change, an emerging new India. Maybe a new India which hasn't really fully come into its own, but certainly that the old India is receding. Yes, in many ways I agree with Shashi that the old India was a very reassuring place. The old India was a very reassuring place because you knew who was going to govern. You knew that it would be one member of one family. You knew that there would not be a question of any change of names. You knew that there were 426 by the last count in 2014. Either schemes, roads, stadiums, geographical things which were named after people, which was men who actually personified the old India. There was not a scope for anyone else. some interloper called Sardar Patel may have suddenly come into his own by getting a massive statue. But by and large, it didn't matter because it was reassuring. It was reassuring because the rich man was at the castle, the poor man was at the gate. And the world made Gandhis very beautiful. It was also reassuring because you didn't have nasty jolts like demonetization. A terribly unpopular thing, I was told. I remember the days in Parliament after demonetization when the opposition was cock-a-hoop, saying Modi has really shot himself in the foot. There were many more historical illusions about Napoleon's Russia campaign, etc., etc. And in Uttar Pradesh, they went out and said, let this be a referendum on demonetization. We know the results of that referendum. It was a terribly unpopular one, I'm sure, Mr. Sen, Mr. Tharoor. We all know that post-demonetization, we've had 18 lakh direct taxpayers added onto the system. Which means that you and I, who used to pay our tax faithfully, have suddenly found there were a lot of people who actually didn't pay taxes, which is something which was hardly a West kept secret. But it was an accepted feature of the old India, because it was reassuring. It fitted in very well with the thing. It was also very reassuring for an old India to have nationalized banks, nationalized in 1969 after some stray thoughts. Why? Because the banks existed to produce NPAs. A very crony arrangement. Someone rang up someone issued a loan, and then that loan was restructured. Sometimes you didn't call it NPAs, you called it stressed assets. Now, you suddenly find 31 crore additional people. Now, how dare these people have bank accounts? How dare these people have bank accounts? 31 crore people have been added on to the banking system. They've deposited something like 73,000 crores into the system, untapped so far. And you say, no, the old India was really reassuring because the banks were meant for the people who really meant for. They weren't meant for the hoi polloi. Just like the airports, as the finance minister said, the flights are not meant for people with chappals. Today you have cheap flights. Now, for a long time you had schemes about smokeless chulas, etc. And suddenly you find 3 crore additional gas connections being given to women, and 70% of those being actually renewed by them themselves. So you have an entire culture of smokeless kitchen. A great revolution which never happened in old India, because the problem was not recognized in old India. But terribly, this new India cannot go on. We had a system where 1.3 crore of people voluntarily gave up their gas subsidies. Voluntarily. There was no danda. There was no coercion. They gave up. Why? Because they were persuaded to. Did you ask for it in old India? But no. This new India is terrible. Because it's narrative. It is contesting the narrative of it. The GST, terrible. Complicated. Multiple rates, etc. 17 taxes have been abolished. 23 cessors have been abolished. 15 different forms of tax inspectors have been made redundant. Oh, but that's not very good, is it? Because old India also survived on those license permit Raj, the system of multiple controls. That was what it was. Aadhaar, terrible. Aadhaar has led to the detection of 3.95 bogus LPG connections, 1.6 crore bogus ration cards, and it has resulted in a saving of more than 56,000 crores of taxpayers' money. Now that's terrible. This new India is terrible because ultimately the monopoly of the left liberal rhetoric has been destroyed. People are speaking in another language. They're speaking in a language which says there is an alternative point of view. They are speaking in a language which makes some people suddenly discover why I am a Hindu. There are people who today are realizing that there is in India an alternative to the 25 years of constant bickering, fragile coalitions, that we have a right to retaliate when we are hit across the border, that it is not a crime to say that you're a Hindu, that you can actually insist on the assertion of patriotism, and that common decencies can be upheld. Now, Padmavati, freedom of speech. Certainly, I agree with Shashi. It was silly. But who was the beneficiary of that silliness? The silliness of throwing. Go to Rajasthan. All the Karni Sena were actually demanding one thing. Please vote for Congress. Because the BJP couldn't. So who are these people? And remember the time when an innocent, innocuous book like Da Vinci Code was banned by the government of the free speakers, of the people who have enlightenment, etc. Remember those times? It was banned by Congress governments. Something like Da Vinci Code. And finally, let me come to the terrible, terrible state of Gujarat. It's a terrible state, we've heard it. Mr. Hardik Patel, a man whose audacity I admire. Because there are very few people who have the audacity to actually demand the reservation for one of the richest communities in India. I admire him also because Bengal owes a lot to Gujarat. It is because of Bengal that Gujarat has the nano plant. It is because of Bengal that so many people work in Surat. The entire gems industry is thanks to Bengal. And it is thanks to Bengal now that they will get another avatar of Gandhi. God bless Gujarat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dasgupta. And that brings us to the end of the 6 eloquent speakers you've heard today. It is time, perhaps, for the chairperson to remind you of the motion that you've been hearing about. This House believes in New India, the pillars of democracy are in crisis. I don't know about you, but at the end of this debate, I'm left slightly confused because I thought pillars of democracy referred to institutions that we've had mentioned, the executive, legislative, judiciary, media, principles, perhaps, of the common man. But it seemed to me that the proposition seems to think that the hacksaw to these pillars is hatred, intolerance, and Padmavati. And the opposition seems to think that the solidity of these pillars is based on GST, Aadhaar cards, and demonetization, completely upsetting my calculations about what we would hear from the two sides today. But I have to congratulate speakers from both the sides before I invite the summing up. We've heard about how the right to be offensive has been replaced today by the right to be offended. And I must thank all the speakers for being so magnanimous in their appreciation of the opposition's talent. In fact, I don't know how many times New India has been mentioned in this debate, But let's go forward together has been mentioned 4 times by the speakers, and that's a great sign for the democracy. In fact, there has been agreement between 2 sides on a number of issues. The most startling has been their complete agreement that both in this country and in this state, the collective clear-mindedness of democratic plurality has been replaced by the dictatorial flavor of autocratic and arrogant singularity. One chose to look at it to see Delhiwards, and the other chose to look at Calcutta and Bengal, but they both saw the same thing. But, ladies and gentlemen, are the pillars of our democracy in perfection or in peril? Are these pillars solid in their stature or hollow in their hearts? One final chance to hear from our illustrious panel as we invite, by tradition, the leader of the opposition, or on behalf of the opposition, Meenakshi Lekhi, to sum up their viewpoint. And you, madam, have 5 minutes.
I thought I'll run a general knowledge class by asking how many of you have heard the name of Umar Fayaz? Please. 3 people, 5 people, 6 people. Now, in an audience which is as versatile as this, as knowledgeable as this, hasn't heard the name of Lieutenant Umar Fayaz, who laid his life in Kashmir protecting the borders of this country. I'm sure you've not heard the name of Firoz Dar, another police officer being killed by the terrorist in that state. The fact is, narratives by the media and the opposition change because the power structure, which was like a beehive, feeding them the honey, is constantly being attacked by New India. That is what the New India is, breaking down the beehive, which created these masses and allowed workers to work while a few people got the honey and rest of them were kept bereft of the basic necessities. The fact is, the narrative of intolerant India has been sought to be built by the people which changed the narrative with the name of the accused, the religion of the accused, and with the name of the victim and religion of the victim. We've seen that when cattle thieves in Bengal get lynched, there is no media reporting because it's Bengal of Mamta Di, probably no lynching can ever happen. And I'm naming Nasirul Haq, a resident of Kutipara, Muhammad Shamiruddin, resident of Kandrapara, Muhammad Nasir, as reported by the Express. These cattle thieves were lynched in Dinajpur for thieving cows. So it's not about who gets to eat what, it's what the law of the land permits. If the same thing had happened in UP, the news would be Gaurakshak. Not cattle thieves, but Gaurakshaks. Cattle is a property. In poor villages of India, cattle is a property. If property is going to be stolen by people, and people are going to be not provided the economic help which they seek, there is going to be violence, and that violence changes color into communal violence when you are in state A, and it becomes some miscreants in another state. That is how the narratives get changed. The narratives get changed because we forget the valor of the communities which lay their lives to support this nation. When freedom of speech is being talked about, I just want to remind the opposition that Zulfikar was banned in which state? Which state and which government banned satanic verses? Which government banned Kissa Kursi Ka. 72 odd films I can name, and hundreds of books which have been banned, including Nehru by Fulpert, which I'm sure Mr. Tharoor would have read. I did get a copy. So things as simple as Da Vinci Code, Nehru, you cannot, there were some sacrosanct facts which the old India represented, and these people were very happy in that cubby hole, enjoying all the loot of the common man and all the scams which happened in this country. So narratives need to be changed, and New India is changing that aspirational narrative. And that is the New India where inclusion is not just a slogan, but inclusion is happening on the ground. And inclusion is seen to be happening because when somebody says, Swaminathan committee needs to be implemented, what did you do? Your budget for agriculture, the maximum budget allocation was 1,00,000 crore plus some odd 14,000 rupees. And now it has changed to 2,00,000 crore plus, and 150% is what they are talking about the MSP for the first time in this country. And it's not just by way of giving subsidies, but by way of investing money into agriculture through drip irrigation, through creating companies, through marketing, through having e-markets, that you are changing the economy of this country. And especially all the people present here would know how industry has been treated in this particular state. So while whenever the narrative is set, the democracy is absolutely not in crisis, the democratic pillars in this country are very strong, and they get to be strengthened day by day, and we will see in near future the New India is emerging.
And the last word traditionally goes to the leader proposing the motion, Shashi Tharoor. And sir, you have 5 minutes by the clock.
In case I don't hear the bell, tell me. Friends, I thought I would use the traditional procedure of a debate to rebut some of the comments we've heard from the other side. And I must say that I was very struck by the familiarity of the fact that all three of them are current or former members of parliament of the BJP, because we found the opening speaker, Tarun Vijay, my good friend, he went actually one better than his own boss, Narendra Modi, because in Parliament a couple of days ago, Narendra Modi attacked our arguments by blaming Congress for partition and referring to the events of the past. Tarun Vijay went back to Ghazni's destruction of Somnath. So, I must remind the opposition, we are talking about the new India, not the ancient India, and that it's today's realities that confirm us. But of course, the history, the BJP has discovered that history can serve as a very useful weapon of mass distraction. And they have been using it every time the government is challenged on its current failures, it immediately talks about the past. Meenakshi Lekhi commented exactly the same thing. At no point in her initial speech did she actually argue that democracy was not in crisis. She spent her entire speech in whataboutery. But what about what the Congress did? And then we saw her coming back again and having a second round of whataboutery. What about cattle thieves in Bengal? Come on, Meenakshi ji, and I know you're a good friend, but as Voltaire said to the Marquis de Sade when he was invited to a second orgy, he said, once is philosophy, twice is perversion. Leave me out. So 2 rounds of this line is, maybe what we need, Meenakshi ji, is very simply to think of the right Lady Gandhi and not the wrong one. The right Lady Gandhi would evoke the simplicity of Kasturba. Why forget her today? As for Shopon Das Gupta, my old college mate, he comes here and says that, that the other side is only one family. There is no need to change any name. But at least we have a family. You have only one man. There is no name change there. The only mantra in the BJP is Om Namo Namaha. And on top of that, we hear about bank accounts. We hear various elements of praise for assorted things, direct benefits, transfer, and so on. Frankly, every single one of these, without exception, were initiated under the UPA, initiated under Manmohan Singh's government. And what we have today is an excellent labeling system so that, in fact, direct benefits transfer, which sounds dull, becomes Jan Dhan, which sounds memorable, but essentially it's the same thing. Bank accounts are opened on the same basis. This has always been a name-changing government, not a game-changing government. In fact, really, I think, they should set up a particular new industry when they talk about Make in India in repackaging, because they're so good at that. Anyway, the other point was Chopin talking about how it's all right now to retaliate across the borders. We also retaliated across the borders. We just didn't talk about it because we were not so interested in public relations. We were interested in effective action. Our retaliations are a matter of record, but didn't make the newspaper headlines. No press releases were issued. No TV shows were held. Theirs, of course, got all the publicity. Wonderful chest thumping followed of the famous 56-inch chest. But as we've all noticed, the attacks have continued. As recently as the last couple of days, there have been attacks across the border, both violations of the ceasefire line as well as terrorist assaults. So I'm not quite sure how we gain very much from this. And it's all very well to poke fun at Padmavati as an issue. The problem with Padmavati, quite simply, is the cravenness of the state governments. They have a duty both to uphold freedom of expression and to maintain law and order. And the BJP state governments in question failed to do either, with the result that the film is not shown in those states because the theatre owners are too scared since the state government won't protect them. But equally, law and order was not maintained. Buses were burned. A school bus was attacked. So where is the courage of the government? Where is the governance of New India that these folks would like us to believe exists? No, what worries me is that all this talk of New India masks, in fact, the destruction of all that was good and noble in the old India. The strength of our democracy was that we could endure differences of caste, of creed, of color, of culture, of cuisine, of conviction, of consonant, of costume and custom, and still rally around a consensus. And that consensus was on the simple principle that in a diverse democracy like ours, you don't really need to agree all the time, so long as you agree on the ground rules of how you will disagree. Today, those ground rules are under threat because, unfortunately, they believe that their way is the only way and everything else is anti-national. Hindi, Hindu, Hindutva does not cover us all. We want unity, they want uniformity. We want consensus, they want conformity. Our ideology binds people together, theirs separates one Indian from another. We seek to empower the poor, they seek to silence them. Let's face it, that new India is not a new India any of us, or even they, would be happier living in than the India in which they were free to say what they are saying to all of us today. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Shashi. That brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to the end of this wonderful debate. And now the role is yours, because you have to now vote to decide whether the motion has been carried by the team on my right or carried by the team on my left. It is customary at this stage for the chairperson to sum up very briefly what you've heard in the debate. And really, the simplest summing up of this debate is that it has been a true parliamentary extension of what should have happened in our parliament. We've just had a debate of the government versus the opposition. Only their roles have been reversed by the Calcutta Club. So really, when you vote, you have to decide whether, like the team on my left, you think the pillars of democracy in this country remain safe and protected because the laws are defined, the lawmakers democratic, the law executors determined and dominant, and the law interpreters decisive. Or if you believe, like the team on my right would like to tell you, the laws are archaic and antiquated, the lawmakers anarchic, the law executors autocratic and arrogant, and the law interpreters assertive and ambiguous. The war is not between the government and the opposition, it is between the D's and the C's. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you that believe that the motion for today's debate, this House believes in New India, the pillars of democracy are in crisis. Those of you believe that the motion has been carried by the team on my right, please raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. You are only allowed to raise one hand. Those that believe that this motion has been defeated by the team on my left, please raise your right hand. Gosh, somebody from the Telegraph volunteer to count? From this position, it almost seems that we have equal numbers on both sides. And I think it is best for me, as chairperson of this debate, to sit in this position of neutrality and say, we have had such excellent speakers that the members of the Calcutta Club remain in their tradition in a position of complete and total neutrality. Thank you very much.